Welcome to the Higher Power Podcast, presented by Higher Power Sports PT, the show dedicated to helping active individuals like you unlock your full potential through expert insights on injury prevention, performance enhancement, and recovery. Kurt Kessler is a board-certified specialist in sports physical therapy and an athletic trainer. In each episode, he and his guests bring you the latest evidence-based strategies to help you move better, feel stronger, and stay injury-free. Let's learn together.
Hey there, welcome to the very first episode of the Higher Powered Podcast. My name is Kurt Kessler, and I'm very excited to get this started today. For this introductory podcast, I'm going to tell my story of how I got to this point, what I'm doing now, and what you can expect on this platform moving forward. This is one of two shows that will appear under the Higher Powered Podcast umbrella, and I'll explain the difference and the purpose a little later on. So let me start by telling you a little bit about myself and the steps that led me to this moment. I grew up in central Pennsylvania. I played all kinds of sports growing up: basketball, soccer, baseball, football, volleyball, you name it. And for those of you who don't know, I'm a physical therapist now. I started as an athletic trainer, but I will talk about how I got to that point. I was in high school, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life, wasn't sure what career I wanted to pursue. I just knew that I wanted to help people, and I was interested in the human body. I played sports and had various injuries, so I was really interested in learning more about that world. PT became my dream in 11th grade, and it came time to start looking at schools, figure out how to make this a reality. And I remember it was my senior year of high school. I was in the local bank, and I got to talking to someone who worked at the local college, Bloomsburg University. She said that Bloomsburg University had a physical therapy program, and at that point, that was all that I needed to hear. I wasn't really ready to leave home or go far away at that point, so hey, if someone's telling me the local college has what I'm looking for, then, sign me up. So it was a lazy decision. I did not look into it very much. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. Turns out they did not have a PT program. They had a pre-PT program, which means they give you all the prerequisite classes, but they don't actually have a physical therapy program. They give you the classes so that you can apply to a program later on. And in the physical therapy education world, if you're not already in a program or granted a seat in a program, it's very hard to get into. It's very competitive. You can't transfer into a program. You can apply for grad school, but most of those seats are already guaranteed to those who went through that school's undergrad program. So by not doing my homework, by not doing my due diligence, I made a bad decision, or so I thought at the time, a bad decision. But I found this out over the course of my first year there. I wasn't a great student either. I spent a lot of time hanging out with my friends and playing basketball for several hours a day. That freshman year, I had really bad grades. And at the end of the year, I just knew that I needed a change if I wanted to be successful. So like I said, you're not really able to transfer into another PT program. So I had a couple people guiding me in my decisions. So I ended up going for athletic training. I transferred to Marywood University. I figured I would do athletic training because it's similar, and if I didn't get into PT school, I could still use the degree to get a job. Unlike pre-PT, you get that degree and you can't really do anything with it. And I loved it at Marywood. It was an awesome experience. Their smaller class sizes were much better for me, and I really excelled there grade-wise. Just kind of growing up, being away from home, being away from my friends, being able to focus. But I never actually planned on practicing as an athletic trainer. I just figured I would go and get the athletic training degree and use that to apply to PT school. And I did, but as I mentioned earlier, it's very difficult to get into PT programs if you're not already attending that school that you're applying to. So I didn't get in, and what I found was that my grades from my freshman year were really holding me back. They were really pulling down my GPA and all the things that these schools look for, apparently. So I ended up having to get a job as an athletic trainer. I never thought I would have to. I never expected to do that, but I started my first job as an athletic trainer in Delaware. I split time between the high school and a PT clinic. I was employed by a PT company. Um, and so I would do, like, depending on the contract, depending on the school, I would do like 15 hours at the high school, 25 in the clinic, or 20 hours at the high school, 20 in the clinic. So I was splitting time. I really loved what I did, but I still knew that I wanted to be a physical therapist. So I applied to schools for 3 years with no luck. I applied to 16 different schools, did not get an offer, did not get an interview, nothing. So one day I remember this, it was a spring season. I was working at one of the high schools in Delaware, and I was talking to one of our family friends who had attended Messiah University, and he told me that they were starting a PT program. And I thought to myself, well, I don't remember applying there, and there must have been a reason why I didn't apply. So I started looking into it, and I couldn't find a reason why I didn't apply there, other than that they were just starting their program at that time. So I applied, and I got my first and only interview, got my first and only offer, and I accepted it. I was super excited. My dream was coming true. And I was 2 weeks away from from finishing my job as an athletic trainer. And we got an email from Messiah that they had not been accredited initially. So they had to delay the start of the program by a year. So, I mean, I was a little bummed out, but, I was still in. I still loved what I did. So it wasn't that terrible for me. I know it deterred some other people, but there was a handful of us in the program that stuck it out for that year. And so I finished up my time in Delaware, and I loved it. I met some people that I'm still friends with. I met some PTs who have heavily influenced my practice today. Ari Kaplan, Doug Adams, Sarah Neal, to name a few. They were the main ones that I kind of looked up to and knew that I wanted to model my practice after. And so then it was time to go to PT school. I went through PT school, loved my classmates, loved the professors. It was an incredible experience. Just such a great atmosphere for learning and for growing personally, and so many valuable experiences in the clinical aspect. And there I was able to meet even more people who heavily influenced my practice today. Dr. Carl Bergman and Misty Seidenberg were probably the two that stuck out to me the most. And again, I just wanted to mold my practice after them. So coming out of school, I decided to pursue a sports residency program. I was accepted into that program. So what that means is I would work my normal 40-hour work week. In that 40 hours, I would have 4 hours a week of mentorship. And Misty Seidenberg, who I just mentioned from Messiah, ended up being my mentor in the program. So beyond that, we were required to do roughly like 5 hours a week of continuing education or learning, and then 5 hours of on-field sports coverage, which was awesome for me. It was just like being back in athletic training. But it was difficult. You get graded on a lot of skills. I probably perceived it as a higher pressure environment than what it actually was, but it was designed to be difficult so that we would pass the board exam. So like I said, Misty was my mentor, and a lot of people were jealous of me in the sense that if you know or heard of Misty Seidenberg, you know that she's probably the best PT that you've ever come across. So I was extremely fortunate there, and I learned so much from her. I also met the director of the residency program who led most of our labs in Alabama, Dominique Martin. She became another very important influence for my practice. And it was a good year in terms of how much I was able to learn and how much I was able to grow, but it was by far the most stressful year of my life. It was extremely challenging to balance that and home and to be able to gain the knowledge and the skills necessary to pass the test. But I did pass the exam. It's a 5-hour test. It was 200 questions, and every question they ask, you feel like you got it wrong. So it was challenging, but overcame that. And, I thought once the exam was over, I would get back into my post-residency life. I all of a sudden had more time in my schedule, and I expected that stress to go away. And it did to some degree once I finished, but it was still there, and it was presenting some different challenges for me. So I was waking up in the middle of the night, waking up at 2 a.m. or 4 a.m., not being able to fall back asleep because my heart rate was up. My mind started racing, and, it started to affect my personal life, but especially my professional life. I would set my alarm early, 20, 30 minutes early, because I needed to lay on the floor with my dog to kind of collect myself and try to calm down before I even went to work. I went through counseling. I did counseling, and it helped. It helped me find strategies to decrease some of the stressful moments. But overall, I still continue to feel stressed and just unhappy in the sense of a professional career. So as part of my outreach, I was allowed to do a couple hours each week of either meeting with physicians or athletic trainers or local people to try to drive some business. I met someone locally who recently built a training complex, and I walked through there, and she was showing me, the turf and the treatment rooms and what they had to offer. And I was in awe. It was like my dream, just dream workplace, dream scenario. And, it ended up, there was no partnership or anything that came of it, but it at least got me to start thinking about life outside of the traditional PT setting. So in the traditional PT setting, you have company standards or industry standards of productivity or how many patients you're expected to see per week. And the company that I work for, their standards were, equal to the industry standards, which are about 55 to 60 patients a week. So it's not like I was being asked to do anything that I wouldn't be asked to do anywhere else. But I was starting to get burnout in the sense that, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't function. I was always operating at, it felt like 120% capacity. And it just bothered me having to see that volume of patients and not have the control over my schedule that I really wanted. And again, it's not because the company was asking me to do anything, spectacular, but it's just the setup of the PT, just a setup of PT within the healthcare system that is driving clinicians like myself into other settings or into other mediums. So there's a lot of times that I would feel extremely frustrated by the constant delays in care because insurance companies would decline or delay authorization for visits, and insurance ended up dictating so much of patient care, how many visits you could see them, and that challenged you to either be creative with your visits or structure your plan of care differently. And it became too much, and it became very frustrating. And then my biggest frustration was, each day I would go to work. And again, the industry standard, you're working with multiple people at a time every day. Your schedule is expected to be filled. And I would be working with multiple people at one time. And no matter how much support staff we had, I felt like I was unable to give the patients in front of me my full attention. And that really bothered me because there are so many days where somebody would walk out the door and I just thought to myself, man, if I just had a second to think, I could get them better today. I could get them so much better today. I could cut their visits in half, but I just didn't have the time when you're balancing 2, 3, 4 people at a time. And I just knew that I could help them get better faster if I just had time to think and pay attention to them. So I started doing some research about cash-based physical therapy, stepping out of the traditional physical therapy setting. I started interviewing people. I interviewed 7 different people who I know or who I was able to get in touch with who have done it. And for the longest time, I thought, I don't want to own my own business. That's too much of a headache. There's too many things to manage. And then I started talking to these people and listening to what they do and listening to their experiences. And I thought, well, if they can do it, why can't I do it? So I started praying about it, and I just felt this big conviction to step out of the traditional physical therapy setting. So in August of 2024, I left my full-time job as a physical therapist. I returned to athletic training full-time because I knew I could do that stress-free almost every day. And then I started my own business. I started Higher Power Sports PT, officially started in August, but up until now, I would say I was mainly laying the groundwork, and now I'm ready to start hit the ground running. So it's like I said before, it's a cash-based physical therapy practice, only treating patients one-on-one. And what's awesome is that with the time to think and with the time to listen, I've been able to help people in the way that I've wanted to since the start. And it has really made a difference in how many visits patients are required or until they are getting the results they want, how quickly they're getting better, how quickly they're getting out of pain. And it has really been an awesome experience to this point. What's really fun and what's really cool is that now that I'm on my own, I'm doing my own thing. I'm able to continue learning and blend my practice from all those PTs that I mentioned earlier, taking something from one person, taking this from another person, taking this evaluation technique from someone else. And it has been really fun to kind of see how each of these PTs are coming out in my own practice. So I've undergone further training to make my treatments more efficient and to help structure the business. I'm a few months into that and have a few months more to go with that, but it has made a huge difference in how I view patients' injuries and their recoveries. And it's been awesome. So some of the early returns, like I said earlier, I noticed with the people that I've worked with so far in the business that I'm achieving the results for them that I always knew that I could. I have more time to troubleshoot, more time to customize their program, so it's more specific to what they need. And I think the biggest thing that I've noticed in terms of efficiency is it was really hard to pay attention to the exact progressions that a patient needed in the traditional outpatient setting because you had so many and you're managing so many at a time. So I just feel like I'm able to customize their program with a lot more intent and a lot more focus, and it has made such a big difference in how quickly they're able to return. I have the ability to make the plan of care exactly what the patients needed, not just what, the traditional setting tells me. And it's resulted in patients needing much fewer visits, getting faster recoveries, and higher satisfaction. They feel a more personalized connection to myself and what they're doing. No one has complained more about paying a little bit more out of pocket because they're getting the results that they want. And that has been super rewarding for me. So for this podcast going forward, the episodes are going to be geared towards active people to learn more about athletic injuries, what we as PTs and performance PTs do for them, how we manage them, and show you some things that we can do to help. Some of the podcasts will be solo, just me talking about various topics, and some will be with guests, people that either know more about certain topics than myself, or people that I know have something great to share so that I can continue learning, and most importantly, the patients or the listeners can continue learning. New episodes will be released every 2 weeks, and that'll be in conjunction with the other show that I mentioned earlier on this network. That show is going to be called Faith in Practice. I'm a very spiritual person, and that podcast is going to talk about incorporating faith into life's challenges, sports, and work so that we can all live out our purpose together. I understand that podcast is not going to be for everyone. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but it's part of my greater mission with my business. So I'm looking forward to carrying out this podcast and learning together, and hopefully have the opportunity to make a positive impact on anybody who listens. Before I wrap up today, I just want to give a quick shout out to a few people that have led me to this moment. Physical therapists that I've looked up to the most. I mentioned Ari Kaplan, Doug Adams, Sarah Neal, Carl Bergman, Misty Seidenberg, Dominique Martin, and Ashley Crew. I would say that group of PTs have most heavily influenced my practice, how I view patient care, and hopefully I'm taking the best parts of each of them to make myself the best that I can be. My practice is really a combination of each of you, and I appreciate the investment that each of you have made in me. I also want to give a quick shout out to Chad Lauer. He has a podcast, an excellent podcast called Lauer Power. Recommend everybody check that out if you like to listen to podcasts. I started listening to his podcast, and it gave me the belief that I could do a podcast as well. So Chad, thank you very much. Just by your positive example, has led me to feel like I can step out and do something like this. And then a last thank you to my family and my wife's family for fully supporting me in all that I do. Biggest thanks to my wife for supporting me in the pursuit of my dreams. So a little bit slower episode here today, but I wanted to set the stage so that people knew my background, where I'm coming from, and where I hope to take this thing going forward. So that's going to be it for today's podcast, the very first episode. Thank you to everybody for watching or listening. If there's ever something I can help with, I would love to connect with you. You can find me on Instagram at Higher Power Sports PT. You can find my email and other ways to connect in the show notes. And I would love to hear some topics that you, the listener, would be interested in learning about. Okay? I'll see you next time.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Higher Powered Podcast, presented by Higher Powered Sports PT. We hope you gained valuable insights on how to stay strong, move better, and prevent injury, all backed by expert knowledge in sports physical therapy and athletic training. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more evidence-based tips and strategies to active individuals just like you. For more resources or to connect with us, head over to hpsportspt.com. That's hpsportspt.com. Remember, you've got the power to perform at your best. Keep training smarter, recovering faster, and living stronger. Just a reminder that the content shared in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be considered medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your health or treatment plan. Thanks for tuning in. We hope to see you next time on the Higher Powered Podcast.